All right. Well, we can go ahead and get started. Hello, everyone, and welcome to this Kendall Hunt webinar, How to Reduce Fear and Anxiety in Students for Business Statistics. In this presentation, you will be introduced to techniques and strategies to give students confidence that your business statistics course is built for success. Just before we begin, to go over a few housekeeping points, this webinar will be recorded and you'll be receiving access in the coming days as well as our presenters' contact information. And please feel free to ask questions throughout the webinar using the chat and Q&A functions, and our presenter will get to them as they arise throughout the presentation. Now to introduce our speaker, Donny Hurwitz.
Welcome, everybody. This is something I'm very passionate about, and you'll kind of see that. I started teaching statistics in 2007, having taken a bunch of classes throughout my educational career, and I was always anxious and afraid every time I started one. I love statistics, but the concepts were really easy for me to understand. The math was a little more difficult. So as I have kind of launched through this journey of teaching business statistics, I've learned that students can teach us how to do things better. And this book and these concepts came from the students when I failed, and they told me how to make things better. So how do you overcome fear and anxiety? The first thing is the students won't trust me or you probably. Thing that's important in this class is I'm a big believer in concepts. The math skills are a much lower pay rate. I have found in my years of both hiring statisticians and teaching students, where you make money in statistics is actually using them, being curious, and understanding how they're applied and how to make decisions with them. The material covers all of that, and it's real world situations where students really like that. Okay, the real world examples make them feel like they're part of it. They can relate to things. The other thing that the students have told me over the years, and the things we provide in this book, are lots of tools. Lots of tools to help them understand concepts. And again, all those tools have actually come from the students themselves. Gee, what didn't work, and how to make it work. The text and all the resources are built toward what are we trying to teach students and what do we want to examine them on. So you're not going to see a test question from our test bank that doesn't have backup in both the text, the PowerPoints, the math quizzes, and all the other tools that we provide. So we're really strong on making sure that what we think is important, we cover, and we cover in detail. Again, this was kind of written about this by the students, and it's written for the students and for instructors, many of whom are anxious about teaching statistics as well. We try to make it easy for both the students and for instructors, and it's easy to adopt. So what are the tools we're providing so far? And we continue to add to them. I'll show you a sample of all of these today. Digital book right now in the fall, we will have some in print available, I'm told. You'll have complete PowerPoint slides, and they're very detailed, as I'll show you. The current test bank has over 1,000 questions in it, multiple choice, true, false, fill in the blanks, and they're all available. One of the things I believe in is I believe in giving quizzes, and so you'll see some sample quizzes, both math quizzes and multiple choice quizzes. Every test question that I ask has got at least one other question that asks the same thing. So you can ask something in a quiz, ask about the same concept on an exam. The math quizzes. One of the things I found with the books I had used before is the math problems weren't very specific. It was not, there was no meaning in the story. So the math quizzes that you see, most of them have a story with them, And I provide detailed solutions both to the students and to the instructors, if you choose to use them for your students, of exactly how you do things, how the math is worked, and not just 6 + 4, the answer is 10. It's very specific about how we do the solutions and how it all works. Every exam has review topics, and all of them again tie to the material that we're discussing, to the quizzes that we're providing, to the math that we're asking them to perform, to the exams. I have canned exams that you can use. You're welcome to use mine. I have extra credit quizzes. At one university I teach at, they're actually 4-credit quizzes for small credit. And I also have exams for 5 sections that I'll show you how I've broken them up. One of the things that I'm very happy with is the detailed formula pages that we provide. The detailed formula pages I provide to the students for the exams because I really don't want them memorizing formulas, but I do want them to understand the concepts and what the details are that make up the formulas that they're going to have to use and perform tests with. And there's lots of other learning aids which we'll show you. So the learning objectives by chapter, I break this up into 5 exams. The first exam is chapters 1 through 4. And we start with the basic concepts. It's the things that I'm sure every book probably has something of. But we, again, use some pictures, and I'll show you some samples of the PowerPoints, the various concepts, and it's very explicit as to how we're trying to teach them on these specific topics. Chapter 2, we talk about, how do you present data? We spend a fair bit of time on that, of showing them how to do it, giving them some pictures of it, and we build a data set that we use throughout the chapter to show them how to do the various charts and graphs and all that. We show them how to do the qualitative and quantitative data in chapter 2. Chapter 3, now we're starting talking about measures, of central location, mean, median, mode, geometric mean, and we do computations for those. I'm much more concerned to understand what those are and what the use is. One of the challenges is that when you consume statistics in the real world, you're getting statistics that somebody wants you to get. If the mean is more favorable, you'll get that. If the median is more favorable, you'll get that. I teach students how to understand what those meanings are and how to digest whether those measures of central location are either applicable to the concept they're trying to understand. We begin talking about variability in the normal distribution in chapter 3. And this is my introduction into the normal distribution, and we use that with the empirical rule in chapter 3. Chapter 4, again, additional measures, talk in detail about dispersion and how dispersion of data can impact decision making. Okay, we talk about stem and leaf, quartiles, deciles, percentiles, dot plots, which we use later in chapter 12 for correlation and for regression. Talk about skewness and the implications, because one data set may have a mean, median, and mode that's identical to another, but they may tell you completely different things about what's going on with the data you've collected. We're talking about different ways to calculate dispersion, and again, how to misuse relative dispersion in making decisions, because you can actually do that. You can use a statistic, it can be accurate, but it can be meaningless. That's section 1, and that's exam 1. Section 2 is 3 chapters, 5 through 7, and we're getting deeper into probability, okay? Classical, empirical, and subjective. We talk about terms that they're going to hear in industry and in different terminology that's used for identical things. That's covered throughout the book. I grew up knowing that an experiment was a trial, and so we try to explain to them how those things may be different in the business world, the more traditional usage of the language. Talk about permutations, combinations, order of arrangement, and give them examples of how all that works. Talks about different ways to calculate probability, and again, once you calculate those, what the meaning of that really is, how it's useful in decision making and to help you make decisions in your business. Chapter 6, we talk about probability distributions. And this is where we start talking about hypergeometric, binomials, and again, the variables and what they mean and how you can get meaning out of those kind of problems, when they're applicable, how to use them to make distributions. And those things are interesting because the students at first, they're not used to this kind of stuff, and they go, oh, I can see how I can use that to make a decision. Chapter 7 is where we get more deeply involved in the normal distributions. We're introducing Z in this chapter. Okay, we'll do T later. Teach them how to use the Z table. And the Z table included with this, I used half the distribution, and I'll show you a picture of it a little bit later. But I've used little tips and little techniques to how to understand the Z table itself, because many students can use it, but they don't understand it. A lot of people say, why do you still use tables? Just get Excel to calculate it, get ChatGPT to calculate it, get R to calculate it, get other programs to calculate it. The reason I do is because if they don't understand what Z is and what that distribution looks like, that value is meaningless. We don't go heavy duty into calculations, but they have to understand what do those values of Z mean. And one of the things I learned the hard way in my own journey learning statistics was that area is the same thing as probability, is the same thing as percentage of observations. And once I figured that out, it's like, oh, now I get that normal distribution curve and kind of what it means. But we use the Z table and teach them how to do that. Later on, I'm happy for them to do the calculations anyway and get the values, but they need to understand what those calculated values are and how they derive them. In chapter 8, the next two exams, 3 and 4, are just 2 chapters. I've learned through many years of trying to make these exams more bite-sized. And chapter 8 and 9 talks about the different concepts with the normal distribution also, but we're talking about using the mean to sample means and the distributional sample means. And that's a concept that it takes a while for students to kind of get, but we spend a bunch of time explaining them the concept and why these concepts work. Okay. Learning how to use the sampling distributional sample means to make decisions. And the key that I discuss throughout the book is understanding the statistics are only a tool. They're not the answer. In industry, I have seen many people lose large positions and spend millions of dollars using data and making decisions when the data was not really meaningful. And so I try to spend some time trying to help them avoid that pitfall. Spend time on confidence intervals and how to use those in decision making, how to calculate them, how to use the Z table. In chapter 9, we start delving into the T table and how to calculate T and the differences in T and Z and why those test statistics are used and when they're applicable. For most of us, hypothesis testing is the toughest part of teaching business statistics. And it always was for me too. It's something that I spend the most time on, and I actually making sure the words are right. And so the words that are in the text and the slides and all the resources are very specific in the language and how they're written to try to get them down in bite-sized pieces where they can consume all those concepts and not get lost in the weeds, which is not hard to do your first time through. So we're talking about 1 sample and 2 sample hypothesis tests, talking about independence in populations, using Z and T, different types all of those types of tests. And I actually myself make them calculate a complete hypothesis test on this exam. And they need to understand all those steps that we go ad nauseum through a bit in the text and we have access to that in several different resources. This is the tougher one. This is the one I spend the most time on. But what I have found over the years is students who went out into industry were very happy they were armed with this set of tools, because they see how it's affected my business career, and I've made lots and lots of money using statistics, and specifically with hypothesis tests, landed some very, very large contracts as a result of doing hypothesis tests, proving to the client that what we were trying to do works statistically and that we can make it work. Chapter 11 is a 2-sample hypothesis test. Chapter 10 is 1-sample hypothesis test. But we're talking a lot about, gee, how do we change these concepts when in chapter 10, we know the population parameters, the mean or proportion. Chapter 11, we don't. We're comparing two different independent populations. So we spend a bit of time on both of those as well. The final chapter is correlation and regression and multiple regression. I've synthesized a lot of this down into one chapter because I think you can do it in one chapter. I can do it at one exam. It's the shortest exam I give, but it's one of the ones that I hear back from students that between hypothesis testing and regression, they use the most in industry and they find the most beneficial in their major projects. All the other statistics we talk about are very meaningful to them, but the ones where they get the big kudos at work and the ones they help make major decisions with, they really tell me that the hypothesis testing and regression and multiple regression are the ones that they are able to do the most. So we cover all of that. Again, it's this class, I teach it in the classroom. I teach it hybrid, which is basically they can come to class, they can watch it online, and they can watch a recording. I teach it pure distance learning. This material, I've used it for all three modalities, and I've been very, very happy with the success rate of it. It just seems to hit the high points. It's not a long book, but everything is there for a purpose and for a reason. It's all intentional. There's not a whole lot of fluff. So we'll do questions later, or we'll do questions anytime. Let me give you an example of how I teach the class. This is my spring semester at a major university in our region. And all this you'll have, but basically we cover these concepts. I'll talk about the papers later. We do workshops. And for every exam, there's a review. I use the extra credit quiz or the Canvas quiz, which we call it at Texas State, for review. And we do this on 16. I do it 5 weeks in the summer and get ready to start a summer session. This final exam activity is my survey, which I'm happy to share with you. It tells me things about what did I do? Did I meet their expectations? Would they recommend this class? What should I do more of? What should I do less of? And again, that's what this class has been built on. Some sample PowerPoints. In the PowerPoints themselves, if you see something in brown, then that's this. I talk.
Sorry, Donny, you cut out there.
Can you hear me now?
A little bit.
How about now?
Very quietly. You can.
Let me turn it up a little bit. Is that better?
There we go. Yep.
Okay. Thanks for stopping in. So the stuff in brown is the important stuff, and you'll see that throughout these sample PowerPoints. All of these have kind of real stories behind them, which we all have our stories, but this is what the whole class is built on. To me, curiosity is the first step. And if you're not curious, none of this is going to be as meaningful. Then you got to seek the data, you got to gather it, organize it, okay, analyze it, and present it in a meaningful way. And I use this actually off of one of my clients. I'm a financial advisor in another life, And this was actually came on their statement. And I thought, isn't that the dumbest way to present data? Again, you see the stuff that's in brown is important, okay? Talk about the decision-making process. I also use data sets, and the data sets typically go throughout the entire chapter and sometimes multiple chapters. So here's your data set, which you'll have access to if you'd like to use it. I show them the different ways to present the data, talk about the different kind of tables, different things. And you'll notice I always try to put the calculations there. I know that sounds silly, but you'd be surprised how many students go, gee, thanks for doing that. Okay, talking about relative frequency. Again, more definitions. There's a lot of step-by-step instructions provided in the book, but I also incorporate them into the PowerPoint. To do a frequency distribution, again, one of the things forever I had a hard time explaining to students was the 2 to the K rule. How many classes are required? And so when I built this little picture and said, here are the 2's, here's the exponents, they go, oh, I get it. And you'd be surprised how that little change made such a huge difference in understanding the 2 to the K rule. So step 2 is to define the interval. And so I take that same set of data, and here's the formula, and I explain to them why we round up to the hundreds or the tens. Okay. Then I construct the table and show them kind of how that works, the 7 classes, and I explain to them how they construct this. This lower value has got to be below the lowest value, and this is automatically falls in within the upper ranges. And then we actually add the data. So again, it just goes through step by step and shows them kind of how things are worked. Now, this is interesting because I do this on purpose and don't make it a histogram because the histogram is mushed together. That's my technical term. And it gives me a minute to describe to them how sometimes Excel doesn't do things as friendly for you. Give them a frequency polygon. Don't spend a bunch of time on these, but they may see them in industry and explain to them the utility of how these are used. Shows how you use frequency polygons for product comparisons on the same data set. All these are built off the same data set that we did from before. And the cumulative frequency distribution, we spend a little time on that. Then we're talking about chapter 3, mental central location. I do have Excel calculations there.
Cut out a little bit again there. If you mute and then unmute, I think that may have worked last time.
Not let me get there. Here we go. Is that better?
A little bit, but still quiet.
Is that better?
Yeah, I think you're coming back. There we go.
My apologies. I don't know what's going on. Okay. So again, showing them how to use Excel and using the different functions. And I do that throughout the sections there. I mentioned to you the formula pages. Let me make this just a tiny bit bigger, a little smaller, I mean. The formula pages, again, are very specific. I actually include the 2 to the K values just because I don't want them to miss that. Talks about how to do the class intervals. And there's each one of these is for every exam. They've got the detail. And again, I try to do the calculations so that they understand them and that they're meaningful. They can see kind of how they work. One of the key things about teaching the math problems is to give them questions that are more applicable in the real world. So if we have a frequency distribution, in this case, with a frequency of 257, N is 257, how do we get the appropriate number of classes? And so this is the solution page that I provide to them. Obviously, as an instructor, you don't have to provide that. You have the student version, which doesn't have the answers to it. What I find is when they see these, they go, oh, that's how you do it. But everybody does it a little differently. Again, I give them an example of, the limits of the class and show them how those are calculated, give them kind of the description so they can see how those things were calculated. The empirical rule I spent a bunch of time on, and you'll notice in the PowerPoint slide when you find them, I do a lot of color, putting the numbers, and doing the addition for them to show them, here's the step-by-step version on the math quiz for the solution. They have a hard time understanding that 95% of the observations lie between plus or minus 2 standard deviations. They have a hard time figuring out, actually I need to fix this one, why 95% divided in 2 is 47.5%. Again, the range, just give them little things, talk about location of percentile, and it just gives them the calculation of how we come up with it. So I found that it helps them to have those. And again, you have them separated so you don't have to use those if you choose not to, but some folks choose to, some folks don't. Every exam has reviews and review questions. The book has these for every chapter, and it also has solutions for them. Okay. And again, it goes into the details of how the solutions are, including the tables and all that. Again, every exam, I give a sample or extra credit quiz, and it has a solution provided for the quizzes, not the exams. And it shows them kind of what's going on, why that answer is correct the way it is. So we kind of go through these things here, and you have a solution there. There's your 2 to the K rule, and I provide that for every exam and for every extra credit quiz. Okay, when I started at Texas State in the fall, one of the things that we were required to do there is to do some kind of report. And I was concerned about that because I thought, gee, students may not like that, and it may, in a very busy semester, be more than we can deal with. But it was a requirement, so we did it. And I actually created 3 reports, which I'll share with you. And this is the rubric, talks about how to do this. But there's 3 different ones. One is on the chapter 8, which is the distributional sample means rule. And the case is, here's what's going on. Here's your example. This is what we're talking about doing. And it goes through this case, and it says, okay, here's the analysis section. What are these measures? But here's the key to it. Here's the questions, and how do you recommend things? What do you recommend? Their job is to do that and make that recommendation. I provide to them a Z table. This is a Z table. Again, what's in yellow and purple are the probabilities. Everything in white is the Z values. But I give them a calculator that they can actually use in Excel, and it calculates the value of Z. So I'm not as concerned, can they calculate it, but what do they do with it? When they have this Z value, what does that mean? And the feedback I get from students is they love these cases and the feedback they get on. It's a significant amount of work, but again, I appreciate that they like it, and they've made them better the 2 times I've given them. Okay, I've given you a whole bunch of stuff in a very short period of time. So questions, anybody have questions?
Well, I do have a few questions here.
Okay,
Um, how does the book reduce stress and anxiety in students taking business statistics?
great question. Thanks for asking that. Students learn that if they have questions, the book will answer them. Some instructors are better than others at taking questions and answering questions. But what students have told me is if they had trouble getting some to get back to them, if they went to the section that's in the book, it was a very detailed explanation along with the other tools that are provided to help them kind of self-diagnose the problem and get there. I'm a big believer in being available. Some folks are not as available for many, many reasons. So they like the fact that it's real world things and it's not super math heavy. It's concept heavy. They've got to know the concepts. The math is the easiest part of this class.
Thank you. And within the AI era, uh, could you expand on how to use AI to teach business statistics?
Great question. In fact, on the sample report, let me pull this up. Everybody's worried about ChatGPT and AI, and I'm a believer in it. But what I have learned through these reports basically is AI doesn't always produce the correct values. But what AI is really good at is drawing these curves. This is a curve for the first report drawn in AI, and it's much better than they can have done in any of the software that I'm aware of, and it helps them kind of understand that. So I actually asked them to use AI to draw their curves, and these reports are a lot about their opinion, and so it's pretty easy to find out when it's their opinion or ChatGPT's opinion, and I reward their opinion and don't reward ChatGPT's opinion. AI is a thing that's going to happen. What I try to do is to make sure the students understand the concepts, not just the math. The math is the easiest part because ChatGPT, once it finally gets its act together, will be able to do the calculations. SPSS will do that. Python will do those. R will do those. But you have to understand, what do those calculations mean? What does this chart mean? What does this picture mean? But AI is there. It's going to be there. But we got to show them how to use it to be effective in the real world.
Thank you. And if there is a business statistics class that is required for all business students, and to reduce fear and anxiety in the students, should we use Excel or R, and why?
Okay, great. Well, first of all, in Texas, for business administration, business statistics is a required part of the curriculum. I was actually on the committee of the Texas Higher Education Coordinating Board, along with the dean at Texas State, and we actually helped create that, sat on the committee. It's a requirement for business administration in Texas. I am a big believer in Excel to start with because it's easier and students can understand it. I am going to, in the future, we're working on using Python to solve some more complex cases, which will include. But the important thing is, can they understand what those values mean when they derive them? That's the important thing. They have to understand what they mean. How do they use them to make decisions? So Excel, I'm a fan of. R is a little bit passe, and I think Python is the way we're going. I'm actually working to learn Python, which I never had to do before. I'm doing now because I'm going to be teaching a different class. And Python is kind of the wave of the future. And so I think that will be there. To learn this class, I'm much more concerned, can they take the numbers that are calculated and make decisions with them?
And I have another question here. What is the student success rate using the book?
I'm real proud of this. The student success rate is super. There's lots and lots of, I've taught 2 semesters at Texas State. Classes are in the 40s. I've not lost one student at Texas State. I teach also Austin Community College, teach over 225 students there this semester. And I only had 5 that didn't complete the class. Success rate's really good. And the students report that it makes it easy to understand the concepts, and that's what I'm proud of. So the success rate's been very, very high.
Awesome. Thank you. And do I have to be a statistics expert to teach business statistics using this book?
Absolutely not. The first time I taught statistics, I had a lot of statistics, but I got the book on Friday afternoon and my first class was Monday. And that was hard. It was almost impossible. This book and the materials associated with it makes it very easy to adopt. And you can actually learn business statistics pretty easily in a manner that's meaningful to the students and is easy to digest for an instructor and a student. If you understand concepts, you'll do absolutely fine teaching with this book. All the tools are there built in for you. There's test bank, there's exams, there's PowerPoints, there's math quizzes, there's all those things are there for you, and they all tie together. Everything ties into the material that we think is important, which is what we examine.
Thank you. And another question is we have why stop at regression and not go further to ANOVA?
Great question. I have been using statistics for 50 years, over 50 years. My statistical background started in social sciences and psychology. I wrote peer review research paper, and we used MANOVA and ANOVA. There was, for business decision making, we found a lot less application using analysis of variance. There are some applications out there, but when I talk to industry folks, very, very few people were looking for folks with that skill set. And so that's why we focused on what folks were needing in the industry for this basic class. As they take their second and third statistical classes, they're going to get into some more complex calculations. But what I found was that if I get too deep into too many concepts, they can't digest them all in a 16-week or condensed 16-week class. It's a great question, though.
Great. Thank you, Donny. And thank you for everyone joining today. And as a reminder, a recording of this webinar will be sent to you in the coming days, and we will provide you all with a link to the product page if you are interested in reviewing a copy. Thank you all and have a great rest of your day.